Hello everyone, Jennifer Maker here. It's a beautiful day to try out sublimation printing. Today I'm going to show you how to convert an Epson EcoTank printer, and we'll go from setup to print to press. And you're going to be amazed at how easy this is to do. Now I have a brand new Epson EcoTank 4760 here, but what I'm going to show you should work with any Epson EcoTank printer, regardless of what model number it is. What matters is that it is an Epson EcoTank. It's also important that you start with a brand new Epson EcoTank and not put the ink that comes with the box and with the printer into the printer. You want a clean and unused Epson printer for this conversion process. While I believe it is possible to clean and convert an Epson EcoTank that's already had inkjet ink in it, I've never done it myself, and so I'm not able to help you there. Your best bet is to start with a new printer to which no ink has ever been added. Now I've already unboxed my Epson and I removed all the packaging and the packing tape. I've got its power cord here, which is not yet plugged in, and the Start Here guide that will walk us through what to do. We're going to follow this. Now remember, your Epson printer will likely have come with regular inkjet ink bottles. Do not use those. Throw them away, recycle them, or find a new home for them. Just don't put them in your Epson printer. So in addition to the printer and the power cable, you'll want bottles of sublimation ink that work for your printer. You can order them online. Mine are the Hippo brand that I got from Amazon. Note that you can get them in two different ways. There's the bottle style with syringes, which require that you poke the syringe into the bottle, draw out the ink, and fill each tank yourself. Then there's the autofill bottle style, which acts just like the Epson brand of ink bottles and will fit right into the opening at the top of your ink tanks for super easy filling. I'm using the autofill bottles today, and I highly recommend them over the bottles that need syringes. I'll put the link to these autofill bottles in the description below this video. Now the other thing that you need is some sublimation paper. There are a variety of brands out there, including ASUB, which I have here, Die Master, and TruePix. I'll do a video later to compare sublimation papers, but for today, I'm just going to use the ASUB brand. And then you'll need a computer. I'm going to use my Mac, but you can also use Windows. So let's get our Epson EcoTank set up, do our first print, and we'll see how well it sublimates for us. So let's get started. Step 1, unpack. Remove all protective materials from the printer. Lift up the scanner unit, remove all protective materials from inside the printer as well. The scanner is right here, and I've got everything out. There was some tape on the back, I got that. All right, so step 2 is to fill the ink tanks on your Epson EcoTank. So this Epson doesn't use cartridges, it uses tanks that you fill with ink. And so instead of using the standard inkjet ink that you would normally put into your tanks, we're going to put in sublimation ink. It's specifically sublimation ink. It's not inkjet, it's not pigment, it's sublimation. So make sure that that's what it says when you order it. If you use my link, you'll know that you're getting the right stuff. Also make sure that it's for your printer because there are some variations out there. Now, I want to note, this is very important, once you convert your Epson printer to sublimation, you're pretty much going to stay there with the sublimation. It is possible to do a whole flushing process and cleaning process. I've never done it. It sounds like a lot of work. So once you convert it, that's pretty much what it's going to be. I also want to note that whatever ink you choose, like the brand of ink, and again, this is the Hippo brand, you're going to want to stick with that. You're not going to want to switch back and forth between different inks because they all have their own slightly different formulation, and then once you mix them all up, it can get really confusing. So once you pick an ink, you want to stick with that. All right, so I'm going to show you how easy these autofill bottles are to fill up your tanks. All right, so here are our bottles of ink. I want you to note that sublimation ink does have an expiration date. Sometimes it's printed on the bottle. In this case, it's printed on your packaging, so you may want to keep your packaging or make a note of it otherwise. But you should replace your ink when you have reached your expiration date. So to fill the ink, we're going to lift up on the printer. Now yours might look a little different than mine. I have a scanner on this one, but if you don't, it'll just lift right up. If you do have a scanner, you'll need to lift it up on the side right here like this. And this is what you should see more or less when you look inside. What's important is that you can get to the ink compartment right here. These are the EcoTanks, black, cyan, magenta, and yellow. We're going to begin with the black one. We just lift that up just like this. Here's our black ink. We're just going to screw off the cap just like this. Now I want to note that on this Hippo autofill, there is a top cap and a bottom cap. Only take off the top cap. So you're left with this. All right, so we have our cap off the bottle, and we're going to just tip it right over. Make sure you're putting the black into the black ink EcoTank, and this part will go right onto this part. Just like this. There we go. Now it's going to fill up. So right down here, you'll start to see the ink levels rise, and it'll stop when it gets to the top level line. So we just need to give that a few minutes to fill up. It's important that you don't squeeze this bottle. Let gravity do its job. If you listen closely, you'll hear a sort of a glug, glug, glug. That's what you want. So if you're having an issue, you may want to just sort of move it like this just to get it to start going. All right, let's take it out. Carefully. There we go. So now it is filled up, so we close this. Be sure to put the cap back onto your bottle. So next is cyan. Next is magenta. And there is our yellow. And save all of these bottles because, after we do our initial tests, we can refill them. And there's also some left, so there's no reason to discard these until they're actually empty. So close the cap, and then close your EcoTank cover, and then close the lid of your printer. So we have filled up our EcoTanks with sublimation ink. So our next step is to connect the power cord to the back of the printer and then plug it into an outlet or an appropriately rated power cord. Do not connect it to your computer yet. So now we're going to power on our Epson EcoTank. We're just going to raise the control panel and power it on. So mine is a touchpad. Yours may have some buttons over here. When the message to see the Start Here sheet appears on the LCD screen, you either want to press the OK button if you have a different model than I do. I'm going to press and hold the Help button for 3 seconds. The next step in the Start Here guide is to complete filling the ink tanks. We want to go ahead and fill them up to the top line. You can see that the blue and the magenta aren't quite all the way up, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's put in more cyan and more magenta. All right, there we go. Now I still have ink left in my bottle, so I'm going to save these because when the levels drop again, I can use the rest of the ink to fill them up. Now the screen says to confirm that the tanks are filled with ink, which they are. Everything is full. So we're going to tap on Done, or you tap OK depending on which one you have. Now it's initializing. Please wait. Do not power off your printer during this process. It says it'll take about 10 minutes. During this time, it's drawing up the ink into the printer. Ink gets drawn in through the tubes, and the levels can drop a little bit. Now, once your Epson EcoTank has finished its initialization process, you'll want to fill the paper tray with some paper. So our print quality tests are next. All right, now my screen says initialization is complete. Move on to print quality adjustments. So I'm going to go ahead and tap 2 adjustments. You may need to use your arrow keys. So first we're going to align the printer to get the best print quality. You can do it later. I recommend you do it now. If you have a tray, of course, not all Epson EcoTank printers have a tray. Sometimes there's a load in the back. Mine does have a tray in the front, and I just pull it out like this. And we'll need to adjust the guides here at the sides and just push in the blue part and slide it like this. And I'm going to use my A sub paper. You can use another sublimation paper. Now the A sub paper has two sides. The back side says A sub on it, and the front side is blank, right? So we want to put it in face down, which means we want to see the A sub printed when we have it loaded in. If you're ever in doubt about which way to put your paper in, check on the loading tray itself. Mine shows that it's supposed to go face down. If you have a rear loading printer, you may need to put it face up. So always check that. Don't assume. Then we close it up. All right, so go ahead and tap Adjust and Print. All right, so this is what we get. We're looking to see if we have more or less unbroken lines. This is what we want. I want you to note that black looks great. Yellow is a little hard to see. Magenta, however, does look like it's broken. I see a broken line in there, so we're going to want to press the X here to indicate that it's not quite right. So it's going to print head requires maintenance. Perform a print head cleaning. All right, so we're checking to see if we have, unbroken lines or broken lines. It took 4 print head cleanings, but I am pleased to say we now have all unbroken lines, and we can now go ahead. All right, so now we're going to align print position to fix any misalignment and banding. So go ahead and press Adjust and Print. All right, so we want to select the pattern that shows no gap or dark line. So note that it'll default to number 3. So check to see if 3 looks good. 3 is what they're trying to get. And my 3 does look good. So I'm going to go ahead and say proceed to number 2. Proceed and print. So choose the square with the fewest streaks, and they show an example. So, and the default is 4. The fewest streaks. I would say it's more like 7. Yeah, I would say that 7 has the fewest streaks. So we press the little plus till we get to 7, and then proceed to number 2. All right, let's print the ruled line alignment. All right, this is the ruled line alignment. Select the pattern that shows no gap or dark line. 4 for number 1, but 6 for number 2. So that's 4, and this one is 6. There we go. Choose the rectangles that are not separated or overlapped. I think that would be actually number 6 right here. So let's change this to 6 and proceed. Print head alignment is complete. You can now adjust again from maintenance. Okay. Select paper size and type for paper source. All right, so I am using 8.5 by 11 letter. So this is correct, but I'm not using plain paper. I am using what would be considered a matte. It's probably premium matte is what I would say I'm using here. And then we'll say okay. So now we need to connect our Epson printer to a computer. So on the back of your printer, there are 2 connections right here. This is USB. This is Ethernet. We're going to use USB. A USB cable does not come in the box. Didn't come in mine, but I'm just using a standard one that I have. The other end will go into our computer. All right, so our next step is to install the software onto our computers. I'm using my MacBook, but you can totally use a Windows computer to do this. Now, I want to note that the instructions say that your printer should not be connected to your computer when you do this. I don't know why, but we'll follow the instructions. And where you go does depend on which model number of Epson EcoTank you have. For my 4760, I'm going to go to epson.com/support/ET4760. Then I'll follow the instructions on the computer screen to run the setup program. I also tried installing the Epson software on my Windows computer, and you'll see that over on the right here as we go along. The process, whether it's on Mac or Windows, is essentially the same. All right, so I go to epson.com/support/ET4760. All right, so there's my printer. I need to choose my operating system. So I'll click on the operating system menu and choose Mac OS 12.x. All right, this is my operating system. And then I click on Go. All right, there we go. So I have the right operating system selected. And then I want to download the drivers and utilities combo package installer. All right, so once that's downloaded, I'm using Chrome, so I can just click this arrow here and choose Open at the bottom of my screen. And that gives me the installer, which I double click on. And I get Epson is an app downloaded from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? Yes, I want to open it. There we go. Continue. Read the license agreement and then click Continue. And then say that you agree to it. And then tap Install. You can choose whether you want to be in their research participation. And then give it some time to download. Of course, you need to have an internet connection for this to work. All right, if you're asked to put in your password for your computer, you should do that and click OK. Now it's installing the Epson drivers and utilities. This is important. You can't print to your Epson EcoTank without having the drivers installed on your computer. All right, so we click Start to begin printer setup. Confirm that the ink is charged. For first-time setup, you need to fill the ink tanks. We've already done all of that. So we click the checkbox to confirm that the ink is charged and click Continue. Now we're going to select our connection. We can connect wirelessly via USB or via wired network such as an Ethernet. I am using a USB cable, so I'll click that, but you'll choose the option that works best for you and then click Continue. Now we need to connect the printer. We've already plugged in the USB cable to the back of the printer. All right, so here's the other end of the cable for the printer. Now, if you have a MacBook like I do, you may not have a port that fits this USB cable. So you'll want to get an adapter. They're inexpensive. You can get them at Best Buy, places like that. And it goes right into here. You may already have one of these. And then it gives you all the ports you need. It is now connected. All right, so that green check mark means it sees my printer. Now it's going to add the Epson print queue to the printer list. And now it wants us to verify that we can print from our computer. Sure, that makes sense. All right, let's go. If we don't want to, I think we can press Continue. But let's go ahead and print a test page. All right, so our test print from the computer looks great. Congratulations, you have successfully installed your new printer. Yay! All right. I do want to note that this setup process, 9 sheets of paper. So plan for that, okay? All right, we can click Continue. We're not going to add the fax. Okay, it's confirming that the fax queue was not added. I don't need that, so I'm going to tap on Close. All right, so my printer drivers should all be installed. Step 6, do your first sublimation print. I'll use my pretty Subliflower, which is a special design that I made just for sublimation printers. It allows us to test and see pretty much all color hues, vividness, alignment, gradients, text sharpness, ink consistency, and black density. And it's labeled with the hex color codes, which match up with the colors in other software, including things like Cricut Design Space. So you can see exactly what color you'll get on your sublimation printer. You can get my Subliflower design totally free at jennifermaker.com/sublimation printers. So I am going to go to the file that I downloaded, my Subliflower. Go ahead and open up this PDF. It will open it up in preview for me. And I'm going to print from here. I'm going to just go to File, Print. All right, so there is my Epson EcoTank. All right, so this is my print dialog box. Now, it's really important that all sublimation prints be mirrored. When you have a purpose-built sublimation printer, it mirrors for you. But since we're converting this printer, we're going to need to do that ourselves. So to mirror your prints from the Epson EcoTank, you'll want to click on this drop-down menu or one that's similar to it and look for Print Settings. It might show up somewhere else on your screen. And this is where you want to change your settings. You'll want to change your media type to something like Premium Matte. And then change your print quality to best. And then you'll want to change, go ahead and check the option next to mirror image, just like that. This should be what you need to do an awesome sublimation print. Let's go ahead and click print. All right, so the Epson EcoTank has finished our very first sublimation print, which looks like this. Now you'll notice that this might look a little bit different than what you expect. This is really normal. It might be a little bit more faded than their original artwork that you used. Mine certainly is, but we're going to transfer it to a piece of polyester to see how it turned out. Step 7, press your first sublimation print. To do that, I'm going to use a heat press. This is the Cricut Auto Press. You can use your Cricut Easy Press or a more traditional heat press, whatever you have. And also for this, I'll want a piece of white cardstock to protect my mat, because sublimation ink, when it sublimates, it's possible that it goes through the material. So we want to protect our pressing mat from any ink going through. Our piece of polyester, and we're going to first preheat this for 5 seconds at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And I've already got it set to 400 degrees, so I'll just lift it up when it gets to 5 seconds right here. There we go. All right, so that's all preheated. All right, so now we need our print, and this is my Subliflower. It's going to give us all the things that we need to know for doing a good job. So we put this on face down like this. And I recommend using some heat-resistant tape to keep it in place, because if it moves around at all during the sublimation process or shortly thereafter, it can cause ghosting, which is just sort of a shadowy, fuzzy look. We don't want that. So it's one piece of tape on the top and bottom. This is heat-resistant tape, not regular tape. So be sure that you use the right stuff. And then we cover it with white uncoated butcher paper. Not freezer paper, not wax paper, not parchment paper, and not even a Teflon sheet. Just white, uncoated butcher paper or inexpensive copy paper in a pinch. This protects your platen, which is the heat plate on your heat press, from any sublimation ink blowout. And then we're going to press it for 400 degrees, at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 60 seconds. The Cricut Auto Press will open for us as soon as it's done. Now, you can go ahead and remove the paper, but while, right afterwards, you want to go ahead and just let it cool down a little bit before you pick up the paper with the sublimation print on it, because for, 10 to 15 seconds afterwards, it's still sublimating. And now it's cooling down, going from a gaseous state to a solid state. And if we want to keep it stable, not move it, or else we can cause the ghosting, get that fuzzy look. But once we feel confident that it's no longer 400 degrees, we can remove the tape and see how we did. And there we go. That looks beautiful. This is the very first press off of the Epson EcoTank, and this is without any adjustment. Now, I can't help but notice that these aren't quite the right colors, so I am going to install an ICC profile just for my ink, the Hippo ink, and my printer. So let's do that real quick, and then let's do another press to see if the colors are more true to the original design. ICC files are specific to the ink brand that you used. So for example, I'm using Hippo brand, and I can find its ICC file by going to Hippo, HIIPOO.com, and then click on Get ICC Files. And here are the files for the various printers. Now mine is not in this list, but this one should be really similar, so I'm going to go ahead and download this one. To install an ICC printer profile on a Windows computer, just download it, right-click it after you've downloaded, and choose Install Profile. So to install an ICC profile on a Mac, you'll want to go to your Finder and then click on Go, and then click Computer, and then choose Macintosh HD, and then choose Library, and you're looking for Color Sync, and then here are the profiles. So we want to put our profile into this folder. So here's our Profiles window. Here is the ICC profile that we downloaded. You can see there's other ICC profiles in here, right? Quite a few. Let's move this over just by clicking and dragging into the window, just like this. It may ask you to type your password. Go ahead and type in your password. And there you go. So now that Sublimation profile is in your list. To print with the installed profile, first open an image editor such as Gimp or Photoshop. Here's Gimp on my Windows computer, which will work the same way on a Mac. Gimp is free software available at gimp.org. To use the printer profile, open up your image, then go to Image, Color Management, Convert to Color Profile, and then click Select Color Profile from Disk. Then navigate to the ICC profile that you downloaded and select it. You can keep your rendering intent on Perceptual, and then click Convert. Now just go to File and choose Print. Choose your printer, and then click on Preferences to set your paper type as Premium Matte, and then for your quality, it should be on High. Then click on More Options, and under Color Correction, click on Custom, click on Advanced, and choose No Color Adjustment, and then click OK. Then make sure that High Speed is turned off, but Mirror Image is turned on. Then click OK, and then click Print. And here's Photoshop on my Mac computer, but the process will work the same way on a Windows computer. To use the ICC profile, open up Photoshop, open your image, and then go to File and select Print. We see these options. Now I want you to notice the Color Management section. This is what matters. So we want to use a printer profile. So we're going to allow a Photoshop to manage the colors, and then we're going to choose our printer profile from here. And we want the Hippo Epson printer profile. Let's go ahead and click Print. You'll want to click on this drop-down menu or one that's similar to it and look for Print Settings. You'll want to change your media type to Premium Matte, and then change your print quality to Best. And then check the option next to Mirror Image. Let's go ahead and click Print. All right, so I've installed that ICC profile. This is what my print looks like. I want to note right off the bat, the colors do look different and they look more vibrant. So I'm excited to see if it really makes a difference or not. Now I need to put it onto the same material for us to compare it. So I'm going to get another piece of 100% polyester and press it on that. Oh, that's so much more vibrant. That is actually a gigantic difference. So I pressed it again with the print that I made using the ICC profile. I imagine you can see the difference right away, just like I could. This is the one without the profile, the Hippo ink profile. This is the one with it. It's really a lot different. This one is much more vibrant, and I don't know, it's more appealing to me. So that ICC profile really does make a difference. All right, so let's do a couple more pressings. just for fun. And here it is on a garden flag. Also, this is the ICC profile version. Also looks awesome. And let's try putting it onto a piece of MDF board. We painted it white and then laminated it so that we're able to sublimate onto it. And I've cut out one of the Sublimation flowers so that we can see how it works. Oh, that's so pretty. And here is our MDF board where it's sublimated right into the lamination. Isn't that awesome? It looks great. I love it. It's so cool. So there we go, a fully converted Epson EcoTank sublimation printer. It was really very simple to do. The only real difference between setting it up as in the EcoTank as an inkjet printer or as a sublimation printer is the ink that you charge it with initially. Now, the first print off the printer pressed with colors that weren't quite as vibrant as my original Subliflower design. But I was able to correct that by getting the ICC profile for the ink that I'm using, the Hippo ink, and installing that onto my computer. Then I selected it in my image editor before printing. And it's definitely more vibrant, don't you think, when using the ICC profile? But honestly, I suspect I would have been overjoyed with how my print had turned out even without that ICC profile. So I think it's really up to you and how true and vibrant you need and want your colors to be. Personally, I prefer them more vibrant, and I'll be using the ICC color profile for my sublimation ink from now on. It's so cool. I'm really pleased with how well the Epson EcoTank printed. It seems just as good as the prints from my Sawgrass sublimation printer at first glance. Little different, but really very vibrant. Now, it wasn't as plug and play as the Sawgrass, and I won't have any official support for my Epson EcoTank now that I've converted it, but it did cost me less money, and we get what we pay for, right? Whether the Epson EcoTank is right for you, or if you prefer a more plug and play printer with support like the Sawgrass, it's all up to you. Check out my printer comparisons at jennifermaker.com/sublimationprinters. And you can learn more about sublimation printing in my Sublimation Startup mini course that covers all of these printers and much more. So get all the details over at jennifermaker.com/sublimationstartup. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.